the worst part about it is people have still not untangled their churchness to Jesus. And if people have not untangled Jesus in church, then they actually come to the conclusion that, oh, then I just don't want Jesus. If that's who
Right.
Jesus actually is, if that's a representative of Jesus,
Yeah.
then I don't even want Jesus anymore.
Welcome back to the Reology Podcast. Reology is a nonprofit ministry that is centered around rethinking, researching, and rediscovery, a process that dives deep into the depths of an intimate partnership with God through a concept Jesus initiated called ecclesia. We strive to cultivate an environment that is not only safe to question and seek, but also one that is founded on the truths of partnership, words of hope that were uttered from the lips of Jesus himself. So in this podcast, we'll question Christian tradition, we'll investigate God myths, and we'll listen to those who are stirring, questioning, and desperately seeking more of what God is doing in and around us each day.
Hey, everybody. I'm Scott. This is the Reology Podcast, and we got with us today Mr. Tyler Korn. Tyler, how you doing, buddy?
Doing all right. It's a good Monday so far.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I wish I could say the same for the Monday over here, and it's not sunny Burbank, California anymore, Tyler.
No, not
No,
anymore.
it's not sunny. It's cloudy with a chance of, I wish it was a chance of meatballs.
That'd be amazing.
It's cloudy without the meatballs.
Yeah, cloudy with a chance of pollen now, since we're about to hit spring.
Well, yeah, we have a Bradford pear down the street, which for those of you, if you're not in you don't live in the southeastern United States area, probably have no idea what a Bradford pear is, but they bloom early and they're white and it looks like snow on a tree. It's really pretty. They stink though.
Yeah,
They stink horribly.
yeah.
So
Notorious for their smell, for sure.
they are. They
Yeah,
stink. So we have one down the street that's already bloomed, full bloom.
yeah.
So just like that.
It's crazy.
Anyway. So today we are going to talk about church. And we typically try not to, in this podcast, talk negatively about church. Sometimes we just can't help it because sometimes churches do things that you're just like, really? And
Unbelievable.
so, yeah, they bring it on themselves sometimes.
Yeah.
But we definitely do say that, we're not saying that someone should not go to church. And we definitely say that church can have a place in the whole universe of Christianity, right? That it should really be a resource for Christians. But most of the time it gets confused with, the foundational belief that we talk about of ecclesia. It gets confused that it's the ecclesia.
Yes.
And it gets very, very confusing. And so we'll talk a little bit about that because there's an article I'd like to share from a couple of years ago. But anyway, Tyler, you and I do not currently go to church anywhere. Is that still correct for you?
That is very, very true. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's by choice. It's by choice as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you guys have, when was the last time you said, hey, we're going to go and visit churches? Because, I think maybe you might want to try this again.
Oh man, that was, over a decade ago for sure.
Really?
Yeah. Yeah, it was
Okay.
probably like 11 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah. It was when I had moved back to Charlotte from Florida
Uh-huh.
and yeah, just had this feeling that maybe I could find a church that really fit me. And I asked around, and I think my wife and I, before we were actually married, before we were even dating, we went to a couple churches and nothing really stuck. Yeah. Which really was not, it wasn't a weird concept for me. I didn't get this feeling that like, oh man, we just got to keep on searching, or maybe there's something wrong with us. We've got to Christian better or Christian harder.
Right.
I think just because of my life that was like, okay, we didn't find one. That's okay. And then we started our own thing. So yeah,
Yeah. Wow. Okay. It's been a while.
it's been a long time.
Now you do, as we've joked before, like you do still like are asked to come and help lead worship, like a play in the band kind of thing
Yeah.
here locally.
Yeah.
And you do that like what, once a month or once every other month or something like
Yeah.
that?
It depends on their
Varies.
schedule, our schedule.
Yeah.
Like I'm definitely going to be playing Easter in April, but I'll also play in March. So yeah,
Okay.
they would have me as much as possible, but
Yeah.
that's just not going to happen. No,
Yeah.
no.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So like, as we've said before, like we haven't been to church in a long time. And the last time we actually went to a church service was Christmas Eve service. And at that point, we were like, "Yeah, I'm done with this church for Christmas Eve service," even though they had like a full orchestra. That was
Oh
the funny
wow.
part is like, I can't remember if I've told you this or not, but if so, I'm going to say it again. um, so we went to a big church here in Charlotte. I won't name it, but you could probably guess. And it's not, it's a more of a, it's a church that's been around for quite a while. It's kind of one of the staple churches in this metro area. Um, and so we went because we heard they had like a full orchestra. And we're like, dude, that would be cool for Christmas Eve, right? Like
Yeah.
to get you
Yeah.
in the mood for Christmas. And this is kind of like that traditional like Christmas Eve kind of feeling with your kids. And they still do the candlelight thing, you know, you light the candles and whatever. And so we went there like maybe 3 years in a row. And one year my parents were down here. One year Robin's mom, my wife's mom, was down here. And so we would take the kids and we would love the first half of it. The first half of it would be the orchestra. And a lot of times they would have like the kids like be involved and they would like create the nativity scene right on the
That's
stage.
cool. Yeah.
It was really cool. It was really, really cool. And literally, dude, at the halfway mark of a 50-minute, an hour service, they would have someone come up, the pastor of the church, and he would come up and do the whole like transition prayer, right?
Mhm.
Where you praise, and then while everybody's eyes are closed, they transition the stage.
Yeah.
And so I'm not a big like eyes closed guy,
Same.
prayer guy.
Yeah.
I'd rather
Same.
just keep my eyes open.
Yeah.
And so the transition doesn't work on me, but I'm watching them. And then so for the first half of the thing, so right off the bat, it's like when you first get in there, it's you go in, they turn the lights down, and one beam of light is just beaming down on the manger, which is right in the middle of the stage. I'm like, this is cool. I think this is
Yeah.
like super, super cool. And then during the transition, I kid you not, some crew comes up and they take the manger off, and another crew people, while they're taking it off, take and wheel the pulpit in, and they put the pulpit right in the exact same place where the manger was.
Yeah.
And so for the next 35 minutes, this dude's going to preach. And it's probably the same sermon every year. And we literally, like my kids are literally like going, can we leave now? And my wife's like, what would it look like if we got up and left? I'm like, you missed your window. We should
Yeah.
have done it during the
Yeah.
transition
We're
prayer.
stuck now.
We're
Yes.
stuck. We got to do this. So like the last year we did that was probably, it was probably same thing, like 8 or 9 years ago, at least.
Yeah.
And we were just like, that's it.
No.
That's it. I just, for some, they just can't not have a sermon.
Well, because it's like, oh, in their head, are they saying, yeah, we got to get the manger off. It'll be a distraction.
Well, it's like,
What
yeah, I
is that
think,
what they're saying?
I think typically like the pulpit is in the middle, and it's like, well, we got to like have the preacher. Yeah, what are they saying? Is the preacher saying, hey guys, listen, if I'm going to get up there and preach, I'm not preaching from the side, right?
Yeah. Is
I have to be in the middle of the stage.
yeah. Yeah.
Someone's making that decision.
Yes.
And that alone makes me go, why would I want to come here
Yes. At a
if
church of
that's
that
who you really
size,
are?
a church of that size, there nothing is happening on accident.
Nope.
Everything is very, very intentional. Which
Yep.
there's good things about that. about
I
that,
have no
right?
problem
That's
with that.
very organized.
Yeah.
The production is amazing, right? But then
Yep.
there's also these things from like the just like the neutral observer. It's
Yes.
like, why
Why?
that feels a little off. Why did they have to
Yeah.
do that? Is it that
Yeah.
big of a deal? So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And that does lead you down that path of like you said, like everything is done with intention. Especially that service. I mean, come on, Christmas
Yeah.
Eve and Easter, everything's going to be, done under intention for sure.
Yes.
Every little aspect.
Yeah.
And so it's like you can say what your values are, but your values are acted out, in force more than they are spoken, right?
Yes. Yes.
It's the actions that you take, and like
Yes.
you can say like we honor this, we honor that, whatever, but yeah, we walked away going like they value the position of the pulpit more than
Because they
the
literally
manger.
did it. They literally
Right, they did
changed
it.
the position.
Right,
It's
right.
not had nothing to do with what the pastor said or
No,
what the choir did or what like the worship band
no,
did or what the greeter said. They
yeah.
literally moved the manger.
They moved it. They moved it. Yeah.
So,
So that was it for us.
but you-
I just,
but you're
yeah.
noticing that that wasn't just like a, oh hey, that's weird. When how long ago did that happen? I'm assuming that happened when you were like also collecting all kinds of data and feelings and
Oh yeah.
emotions about church, right? So that was just like one little thing in the middle of a massive
Oh yeah.
transitional.
I was in the middle of all this questioning stuff for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah.
The only reason why, like I said, the only reason why we went to Christmas Eve service was because of the orchestra. And like
Yeah.
for me, I was like, I want to worship the manger, right? I want to worship the Christ
Yeah.
and celebrate the birth of the Christ. And that's what I thought I was getting. But in the end, like the sermon was really, I mean, it trumped the celebration of the Christ,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
They moved it. They literally, I mean, they not only figuratively did it, they they literally did it.
Did they bring it back out?
No,
Okay.
they moved over to the side. It was over on the side,
Oh, they
but they had
didn't fully remove it.
they
Okay.
didn't remove it. They just took it and moved it over to the side of the stage.
Which might actually be worse than if they had
Yeah,
just like fully taken it off the stage.
yeah, yeah, yeah. It's like the Olympics, right? Where you have the first tier is like bronze, the second tier is silver,
Yeah.
and the third tier is the gold. It's literally like the manger was on the gold, and we moved him down to the silver, and we brought the pulpit up to the gold.
That's funny.
So that was it for us. I just recently bumped into, well, I didn't really like bump into her, but I was over at this cafe that I go to, and I got up to do something, and I came back, and I thought I saw someone that I knew from my last, ministry experience at the church I was at the last, which was 15 years ago,
Hmm.
14 years ago. Um, So, and I was like, yeah, that's her. I was like, here, I'll finish what I'm doing. I'm going to get up, and go find her, and go say hey to her because I hadn't seen her in a while. And I got up and I went and looked, and she was not there. So I reached out to her on Facebook and said, hey, I don't know if you saw me there or not, but I did see you, and I got up to come find you, but you had gone. I didn't want you to think, if you did see me, I didn't want you to think I was being a jerk or that I didn't see. I did. I wanted to come and say hi. And we kind of laughed, went back and forth. But the first question, what do you think the first question she asked me was?
No, where are you going to church these days?
Where are you going to church?
Yeah.
Have you found a church? She actually, the wording she said was, have you found a place to worship?
Yeah.
That was,
Okay.
but she has asked me in the past,
Okay.
like when I see her, she'll ask me. And I just said, you know what? I said, there's an old saying I would tell people that it's really hard to find something you're really not looking for. And I said, I'm just not looking for that anymore. I said,
Yeah.
I would love to find a place of true worship where people are coming together and they really were worshiping God in different ways. That would be cool.
Mm-hmm.
But there isn't that. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
told her, I said, I gave up on that like 8 or 9 years ago. And I said, it's not a give up. I didn't give up on Jesus, but I did give up on that. But
What was her response?
she's like, cool. She gets it.
Okay.
And I
Okay.
think because like she's asking me because the first time, because the church that we were in obviously dissolved, right?
Okay.
Kind of went bye-bye. And the first time I'd seen her after that it dissolved, because I'd left before it dissolved. she was like, "Hey, have you found a place to like?" She was wanting to know if I had, so that I could tell her, like, refer something to her, because she knew that, like, I was probably a little picky.
Yeah.
So I didn't ask her if she'd found a place because you know it wasn't that important. But
Yeah.
I doubt that she has. I doubt that she has. But so it's interesting that there's like a two-sided coin in from what I'm seeing, a two-sided coin of people who like think that church is like you can't be a Christian if you don't go to church, right? So
Hmm.
like, have you found a church yet? Like that's really, really important. You need to find a
Hmm.
church, right? Or hey, where do you, oh, you're a Christian. Where do you go to church? As we said before, like that's the gauge, the thermometer of like you being a real Christian is like, oh,
Yep.
you're a real Christian. Cool. Where do you go to church then?
Hmm.
And that is like shifted then into like this kind of thing of like, I'm still looking for a church. Have you found a church? No, I haven't. Yeah, me neither. It's like that conversation has shifted to that, which is like super
Interesting.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Have you
Super
done any
interesting.
more thinking about that? Like the reasoning behind that shift?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think it's not news to either one of us. I think people are just they're just bored. I think they're bored, and I think it's like what we were joking about with the Christmas Eve church
Yeah.
thing story is that, in the at the end of the day, most churches are probably more concerned about themselves than they are about really like getting full on into like disciple making, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
Because ultimately there's still like an anchor attached to that, right? It's like, oh, we want you to be a disciple, and we want to disciple you as a disciple, but you just got to make sure you're still coming to church. Like it's
Yes.
still that their
Yes.
focus is still on that. So no matter what they say, you know, again, actions speak louder than the words. So it's
Hmm.
like they still think that that is like really it. Let me read
Uh-huh.
this to you. I just found this morning. This is a, so we've, there's a quote from, an article on, and I'm not a big, the Gospel Coalition fan. But they did have an article from 2023 called Five Misconceptions About Dechurching in America. And they're
Okay.
actually even talking about dechurching, which is like, that's how that's how obvious it is.
Yeah.
Because typically the Gospel Coalition has been a little more like conservative
Hmm.
in the past. Anyway, so they have these different reasons why, misconceptions why, and there are things that you and I have talked about, like people just they had negative experience with the church and they get their feelings hurt, and that's why they're leaving. That's a
Yeah.
misconception. So it's actually really good. So I was actually trying to find it on the big screen over here because I had it on my iPad, and I was like, hey, there's another one article they wrote called "Prone to Dechurch." Lord, I feel it. A little a little pun on the old
Interesting.
hymn. And so apparently there was a let me get to here. There was a, and this one is in 2023 too, late 20 October 2023. And there was a, apparently, and I think I do remember this, but I don't specifically remember it. But there was a video clip, they said, of John Piper that made its rounds on social media. And he's responding to a believer. Now, this is, in my opinion, this is totally John Piper, because I'm not a huge John Piper fan either, because I think he was incredibly. I think he's died since then, if I'm not mistaken.
Oh, wow. John
I
Piper, are you sure?
think he did. Did he not? Did he not die this
I
past
think he
year?
was in the hospital, but
Okay,
yeah,
okay. I've
not
already got him in the
important.
grave. Anyway, um, he's kind of conservative dude, and
Yeah.
he's a preacher.
Yeah.
He's also a theologian, but he's also a Baptist preacher. So he was responding to a video, to a question about a believer who says this: "I'm not walking away from Jesus, but I'm done with church."
Hmm.
And he basically responded by saying, "Quote: To walk away from the church is to walk away from Christ." And like that is like That's the response, in my opinion. That's the response that most people hear and see and go, "You don't get it."
Yeah.
And that's, in my opinion, and you tell me what you think, but I feel like that's why people are having a hard time with either going to church or trying to find a church or even going back to church, being completely de-churched or whatever, or done,
Hmm.
is that they just they don't think that the church really gets it.
Well, yeah,
And
because yeah. Go
yeah,
ahead.
go ahead.
Yeah, because that regular person is expressing how they feel.
Yep.
They might have there's how do I say this? They said what they said, but underneath of what they said is how they actually feel.
Right.
John Piper just throws it all away and says, regardless of how you feel,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
This is what I think you're trying to say,
Yeah.
which is ultimately like if you're I'm assuming to him, if you're leaving the church, that means you're leaving Jesus, then you're going straight to hell.
Right. Yeah,
And
totally.
so we've got like now millions of people basically saying what that person said,
Yeah.
but also being able to hear what John Piper says. And the worst part about it is people have still not untangled their churchness to Jesus.
Right. Right.
And
Yeah.
so they hear that person, they hear John Piper say, hey, like you can't do that. And if people have not untangled Jesus in church, then they actually come to the conclusion that, oh, then I just don't want Jesus. If that's who
Right.
Jesus actually is, if that's a representative of Jesus,
Yeah.
then I don't even want Jesus anymore.
Right. Yeah.
And on campus at Charlotte, we have students that are literally going through this right now. They
Hmm.
have they have come to this conclusion, this wrong conclusion, that modern Christianity equals Jesus, and what modern Christianity is, they hate. But it's so hard for them to untangle modern Christianity and Jesus that they're just saying, "I'm just not a Christian anymore." And I think that's kind of at the core of this. This is what we're really also trying to talk about is like church does not equal Jesus. Even modern Christianity and how we observe and what it does not equal Jesus too.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, those are
Yeah.
just my initial thoughts. And yeah, I
No,
mean, John,
you're right on.
But John Piper saying that is not a
Yes.
surprise,
No,
right? Like
not at
this is
all.
his thing. This is what he does. And
Exactly.
but also people love that. People love that response.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah,
to me
they do.
there's multiple sides to like this coin that
Yes.
he was also playing into the character that he's played for a long time. And I'm sure he loves it and has a great life and he truly believes what he's talking about. But it's so dehumanizing
Oh, totally.
for for somebody to say that to him and him that and that's his response.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
can't believe that
very
that's actually happening.
yeah, it definitely smells of old crusty traditional church is what that smells like.
Well,
And you're right.
it's
I totally believe
legalism.
that. Yes, it totally is.
It's
And
if
it,
you don't do this, then
yeah,
this is what's going to happen. And there's
right.
no nuance, there's no
Right.
gray, there's no middle, there's no like room to question or to like be a nomad or whatever it is. It's
Right.
just, no, black and white. This is what you do. If you don't do that, then this is what's going to happen to you.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. The guy the article wrote the article, he says this, um he said, if you zoom, I'm quoting his article, if you zoom out of your contemporary Western setting, you'll find that Piper's comments about following Jesus and belonging to the church are standard fare for nearly all Christians around the world today,
Yeah.
as has been the case for nearly all of church history. He says, and this is what he says. He says, Cyprian of Carthage which was around 280 or 210 AD,
Okay.
210 to 258 is when he was his lifespan, I guess.
Wow.
He's the one who said that you cannot have God as your father unless you have the church as your mother. A statement reiterated by the reformers, including John Calvin, who pointed to
Okay.
motherly terminology as a sign of how useful, quote unquote, indeed how necessary the church is for believers. Here's the problem. What word did Cyprian actually use in AD 210?
I'm assuming it was ecclesia.
It was not church. That's for sure. It was not around. So, since this
What
is
word
a
did he
Greek
use?
world,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
a Greco-Roman world, he would have used a Greek word, and we know that word to be ecclesia. So John Piper using church and Cyprian of Carthage using ecclesia, as you and I both know, not apples to
Yeah,
apples here. And
yeah,
that's the problem, I think, is and again, like you said, that is the legalism of like saying like the policy is more important than the actual words, right? Or the
yes,
meaning. And
yeah,
this is the policy we adhere to.
yes,
And you can't have church without you can't have Christ without the church.
yeah,
That's the legal policy. The problem is the terminology and the meaning is completely jacked up.
100%.
And when people are feeling that they don't line up, right? That something's not right here. We got someone like Piper, or not just Piper, tons of other people who
Yeah,
say like, no, 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 you can't. You cannot have Christ without the
yes,
church. How in the world?
yeah,
And they would agree that church is the partnership, but they also, as we also know, they use that wonderful, Swiss Army knife word church for multiple different things. And so it
right.
gets really confusing.
Yeah,
But ultimately for people like John Piper, I don't want to just like, throw him under the bus, but there's tons of people, as you and I both know, that think the
yeah,
same way.
yeah,
But for them, ultimately, even though they may agree that church is the partnership, but ultimately, when it comes down to it, and boots on the ground, rubber
yeah,
meets the road, it's being there on Sunday morning.
yes, yes,
That's it. That's
yep,
that's their actual
yeah,
what they actually mean. What
yeah.
John Piper actually means getting up on Sunday morning and being there. That's what
Because
he means.
that's what the whole thing is centered around. And they
Yep.
can say, well, we actually want you to be a disciple or give or whatever it is. But honestly, it boils down to just follow the money.
Yeah.
Like, where are
Totally.
all the people? Where's all the investment happening? It's on Sunday morning. It's at churches on Christmas Eve,
Hmm.
hiring people to be there so that
Yeah.
we can have an experience. I mean,
Yep.
and for, I don't know, I guess like my parents' generation, how do I say this? It was harder to see.
Yeah.
I don't really know, or there wasn't as much legality or policy as you were saying when it came to Sunday morning. And somebody much smarter than me probably has already figured this out. But as that generation starts to get older, and now my generation and your generation start to see what's actually happening, it's becoming more and more evident. And then
Yeah.
like we don't even have to get into like the younger generations that are just like not even exposed to this.
Mm-mm.
They're not exposed to Jesus or like legalism in church, which
Right.
I think there's
Yeah,
good
they
and bad
bowed
things
out of it
about that.
all because
Yeah.
they can't, you and I are being able to, we've been able to like split it, right? And go and
Yeah.
dissect it properly and
Yeah.
go, wait a minute, wait a minute, wait a minute. That this belongs over here and this belongs over here.
Yes.
And the other extremes, the old and the old goes, no, they're all together. And young
Mm-hmm.
goes, no, I don't want any.
Mm-hmm.
They are together. I don't want any of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I can't remember growing up. Now, again, I became a Christian when I was 16, in 86. And before then, I didn't have any context or know or even care, obviously. But going through Bible college and then being in ministry for, over a decade, I don't remember anybody really saying, you know what, something's not right. Why are we doing, I didn't,
Mm-hmm.
first of all, I was involved in youth ministry, so I had an outlet, right? Church and Sunday morning wasn't everything to me.
Yeah.
So it really didn't like really kind of equate to me until I was obviously out of youth ministry. But I don't remember anybody ever questioning it, saying anything about it. I think people left most of the time and they would either leave and be like, I'm not interested in God, I'm not interested in church, or they would leave and get their feelings hurt and they would go to another church, or they
Yeah.
would leave because it was boring and go to another
Yeah.
church. They would try. But I don't think I ever heard anybody, and this is probably why it's so like freaky for people. I don't think I'm not think, I'm positive I never heard anyone say, you know what, I'm good with God and I'm pursuing him more than ever in my life,
Hmm.
but it's just not at church. I don't
Yes.
remember anybody saying that. Nobody.
No.
I do remember people. So like one of Robin's best friends growing up, she became a Christian later in life and she was trying to get her dad, trying to like, talk to her dad about Jesus. And she was just begging him, please come to church with me, get some church with me. And he's like, he told her, he said, finally, he said, listen, I work really hard. I work
Hmm.
long hours. And he said, on Sundays, I spend time out in this flower garden. And he's like, that's my church.
Hmm.
And like to you and me would be like, oh, that's kind of a cool statement.
Love that.
But
Yeah.
in the 90s though,
No.
it was a cop out. It
No.
was like,
Yeah. Yeah.
no,
Yeah. Yeah.
it was that John Piper
Yeah.
mentality, right? Of like, no, you cannot find Jesus in the flower
Yeah.
garden.
Yes.
We kind of put Jesus in a box that
Yeah.
he only showed up on Sunday morning from,
Yeah.
10:30 to 11:30 or 11:45.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so what's going on with the students wise when they I mean, do you come across students that are like, hey, I'm thinking about going to church, or are pretty much all your students like, eh?
They no, it's different. I don't think we are regularly with students that are just gung ho about church. Um, we have some that are involved in other ministries, and that's more community based
Mm-hmm.
than they just believe in the gathering of the Christians to worship God. That kind of
Sure.
language.
Mm-hmm.
We're not having those conversations. But with the Christians that we do have relationships with, I would say a good percentage of them, oh, like 45%, every now and then they'll tell us, hey, I went to this church this past weekend, or I'm thinking about going here, or would you guys have any recommendations?
Mm-hmm.
And it's consistently they tell us, guys, what the hell is happening?
Mm-hmm.
We are always hearing stories of like this weird thing. Recently, we had a student who visited a church with her friend, and it's a very charismatic church. And when they walked up, they had never been there before. When they parked and they walked up, the greeters figured out that they were the first timers there. And so they didn't let our students sit wherever they wanted to. They sat in the front row
Oh
of the
Lord.
church. And it's not a massive church. I'm sure there was like 250 people there. But this
Okay.
church also has like a ton of cameras. And
Yeah.
so the entire time our students were there, there was a camera locked in on them as first time attenders. And then they were also asked to do like a video at the end of the service and tell
Good Lord.
the media people like what they thought about it so that they could be put on social media so that could be marketed for other
Oh
people
my
who are thinking
word.
about coming to the church. And
Okay.
they were like no, and they got out of there as fast as possible. And that's like that's an extreme example, you know. But we
Yeah.
also have students that are going to like another popular church in Charlotte, and especially for the university students, and they're just like, yeah, it was fine. He said a couple weird things. Worship was really good,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
It's a
Isn't
professional
that funny?
band.
That's the takeaway I think for a lot of people.
Mhm.
If the worship actually really is
If
decent,
yes,
right? That's the walk the takeaway that a lot of times I hear too is like, the worship part is like great. It's only two or three songs,
yeah,
but it's dominated by someone speaking, and
yeah,
unless they're like a really good speaker, it's not really memorable.
yeah,
So yeah, that's funny.
yeah. And,
That's
and
funny.
but the interesting thing is, I guess with our students that we've known for a while, the conversation doesn't ever go to, guys, can you just help me find it? I just feel like I need to find a church.
Hmm.
We don't have those conversations, which
Yeah.
is great.
Yeah.
Um, because I think because of what we want our students to come away with after they graduate, it's not this how to be a church member, how to volunteer, how to give, how to show up. There's just something like, yeah, we're not replacing the manger with the pulpit. I
Yeah.
think that's a really good visualization of what we're actually trying to do. Like keep
Yeah.
the main thing. And if
Right.
the main thing leads you to that other thing, amazing.
Right.
That's great. And if you're enjoying that and that's beneficial for you, cool.
Hmm.
But let's talk about like this partnership with the manger, right? With the
Yeah.
grave and with the resurrection and with heaven.
Right.
That's your reality now, and it's not being saved for after you die. And those conversations, and I feel like once you open up that door, it's the flower garden.
Yeah.
It's this whole different world that we're exposing these students to that is very scary, it's uncharted territory. It's a lot of unknown, but we really believe that that is where like life actually is. And that's where experience is, that's where transformation is. It's not just making sure students are doing something. It's
Hmm.
always having these conversations of discovery, of nuance,
Yeah.
of letting them ask really, really tough questions that we don't have the answer to. And I think that's like really, really crucial for when it comes to discipleship. Is like discipleship is not trying to answer questions. And we've got a couple students that were actually introduced to Christianity because they were looking for answers. They're very logic, brain oriented, and that high school, middle school logic really worked for them when they were there. But then they get to college, and the world is very different now. And
Yeah.
they're
Yeah.
growing up, and they're seeing more, and they're experiencing more, and they're starting to have different feelings. And they're literally saying, "Yeah, this logic is not working for anymore." And we tell them, if that is your relationship with God, then please stop. If
Hmm.
that's who you think God is, then it's okay to say, I don't want that anymore. And if that means that you have to say, I don't want Christianity anymore, good. Because I don't believe that's actually Christianity.
Right. Right. Yeah.
But
What
like
form of
you,
Christianity are you
but like,
talking about here?
but like
Right. Yeah.
when the Sunday service is the main
Yeah.
thing, or when church is the main thing, you're not allowed to say that.
Hmm.
You're not allowed to say that because you still have to get people to buy into the institution.
Yeah.
And so you skip over or gloss over like this incredible journey, right? Which is like I feel like that's a very Christian thing to say. Like it's all about the journey, not about the destination,
Right.
right? But most Christians I feel like have just ended up in church and they didn't have any journeying, or they only
Yeah. The
want the
journey was
journey,
very, very short journey.
or they only want the journey to look a certain way.
Yeah.
Where growth is defined as only an upward trend, you know?
Hmm.
It's again, it's like black and white. Like I have to do these certain things for me to grow, therefore I'm going to do those things. Um, yeah, but for me, that's not how the kingdom works. I think we're both experiencing that like growth is not actually linear. It's it's multidimensional, right? And you can't
Totally.
always measure it, especially in the moment.
Yeah.
Um, Yeah, so I think for our students, us saying, yeah, it's okay to let go, because there's so much pressure for them to act like they know it all and to get it right, which is not the gospel. It's in the midst of us not getting it right and us being so unsure of everything that God
Yeah.
says, I'm still with you. It doesn't matter what you're doing. I'm still offering my partnership. That's what it means to be loved
Yeah.
by God.
Right.
So, and I think for us, yeah, we're playing the long game. We're playing like the gospel game of, and we are not going to stress out if students aren't getting it because I still don't get it. Like, who am I
Right.
to say that like I've got it all figured out? I don't. And
Yeah.
so
Right.
I'm not going to pretend to have it figured out just so that they can say they're Christian or so they can go back home and do any kind of Christian stuff. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Fit in the mold and
Yeah. Yeah.
just do it. All right, before we leave, I want to make a disclaimer so that people don't get hate mail or whatever. We're definitely not saying church is not cannot be a useful thing. It can. Some people go to church and they're like, I'm okay with it. And I think the reason why I'll say this, some people who are still questioning and still exploring God and going deeper with God still go to church. I think they go to church because they know what the limitations church it has, and they don't look for church to fill things that church can't fill.
Yeah.
So, and that's a good thing, because there are a lot of things that church cannot fill, and it can't replace the relationship with Jesus, obviously. Sometimes it tries to do that. So we're not talking about every church, but a lot of them. Maybe the
Yeah, and that's okay to
vast
say.
majority.
That's okay to say out loud.
Yeah,
And
it
if
is.
people get defensive, then that's okay.
Yeah,
That's all right.
it
You can
is.
get defensive.
It's true.
From the whole Rheology team, we hope these podcasts are encouraging and educational. Rheology exists for three main reasons: to reach, train, and equip those who want to go deeper with God in this partnership called ecclesia. If God has been stirring in your heart, where you are wondering if there's more than what you've been experiencing in today's 21st century Christianity, we'd love to connect with you, to hear your story and help you know that you are not alone. You can simply contact us via the website, rheologylife.com, or reach out via Instagram at rheology_life. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.